The Olympic quarterfinals are set. Who's the biggest challenge to Team USA? Lauri Markkanen remains on the trade block with a deadline coming up that's pretty important. We'll talk about that. Plus, just how bad is the tanking going to be this season for Cooper Flagg? All that and more on Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On NBA, your daily source for all things NBA from the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for joining us and making this part of your day. I appreciate you guys being with us Monday through Friday. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On NBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network, co-host of Locked On Nuggets. I'm joined by Tony East, who covers all things Pacers, including over at Locked On Pacers. You can catch him on Twitter/X. I always get very weirded out by being like, he's on X. At Tony R. East is where you can catch Tony's prolific work. If I have any questions about Indiana basketball of any type, I go to Tony. He's my guy. On today's show, we're going to talk about how bad is the tanking going to be this season? Because I'm starting to do win total stuff, and like, there's going to be some bad teams because Cooper Flagg's really good, as well as Ace Bailey and the rest of this draft class. We're going to talk about Lauri Markkanen and the deadline that will be happening as you're listening to this on a Tuesday. We'll catch you up on what's going on there. But we start, Tony, with Team USA, who is in the quarterfinals of the Olympics, pursuing that gold medal. They will take on Brazil in games on Tuesday. They will face the winner of Serbia versus Australia. The other side of the bracket is considerably less pleasant, as it's Germany versus Greece, and then a big one with Team Canada taking on France. So I'll ask you this, Tony, kind of right off the top. Is there a team, I think we're probably in agreement, Team USA is probably going to win this thing, but of the teams, who is the team that causes you the most concern for Team USA's chances of making out of the quarterfinals or out of the knockout stages and obviously medaling?
Germany would be my answer. They can't meet them until the finals. Also, first of all, for those of you who listen to Locked On NBA every day, yes, you're getting me 3 out of 4 episodes. I promise this trend will not continue. There are a lot of vacations in Locked On land right now. Germany is the perfect anti-USA team to me. They have size. Their guards don't turn it over. Dennis Schroeder's awesome in FIBA for some reason. And the thing they did well, as everybody saw in the exhibition, is they take advantage of the math in a way that hurts USA, and that they get up threes. They have guys who get them up and make them at a very high level. And yes, this Team USA team has way more talent than them. But I think in that game at one point late in the game, I don't remember where it ended at, but it was 41-13 in 3-point attempts. Like Andreas Obst gets them up, Schroeder gets them up, Tice takes them, Voigtman sometimes takes them. Like the whole team gets them up, and they're just tough, and they're really built well for the FIBA style of play with their size. So I don't even know if they're the best team on that side of the bracket, but stylistically to play Team USA, even as we saw in the World Cup, albeit with a way worse USA team, they're tough. They're tough to beat, and I think they might be the toughest team for USA.
I think they are the toughest team on the other side of the bracket. I think they are the toughest team for Team USA to kind of battle with. I think if you look at, like, yes, you can list all the NBA talent on Team Canada, but Canada honestly hasn't played as well as maybe I think a lot of us expected. Like, I thought Team Canada would actually be a little bit better. Now, maybe they really find another gear here in the knockout stages, and they're able to make a real push and maybe get silver. But for me, I think it's Germany. I just think that Germany's playmaking, along with, you mentioned that 3-point edge. That's such a good formula. We're going to play great defense. We're going to shoot a lot of threes. Good formula for basketball. That gives you a chance in a lot of these kind of situations. What I'm most excited about, if this becomes the gold medal game, is that the possibility of Dennis Schroeder and just how ejected he will wind up in that game, because he's going to get ejected. But the question is, how ejected will Dennis Schroeder be in that game? Will it be early on a little ejected, or like very seriously ejected? Because that's going to be a fun environment with the amount of trash that Dennis talks, as well as knowing a bunch of the guys, obviously, from the NBA. Serbia, I think. I was
going to get to them.
Yeah. I mean, look, yes, like Jokic played them even, right? I think a lot of that depends on whether or not Joel Embiid plays again in that matchup. And like, look, the reality is just Team USA. I kind of was explaining this to my dad, and I had dinner yesterday, and he was asking me about Team USA. He's like, why are they close in the beginning? And I was like, well, the best 5 players from these other teams, their starting units can hang with Team USA for a while, but it's like in college football, when you start to get to the reserves, that's where it starts to really get out of hand. And quite honestly, Team USA is like Alabama or Georgia in that aspect. And so they're just able to get separation. Yoke's amazing, and Bogdanovic, I think who didn't play in the friendly and will probably play better the next time that they meet, if they meet. But I do think that Serbia still just doesn't. They needed a third guy, and they just don't have the third guy to be able to lift up those units to give them a real chance versus Team USA.
Yeah, I think that I assume Serbia will beat Australia, although I guess I shouldn't get Australia's pretty good.
They're pretty good.
But like Serbia versus someone else in the third place game would be a great, they're really good. Jokic is amazing. There's a reason they kept up with USA. What do you play 30 minutes and they were dead even because he's that good. But yeah, you're all over. And the thing that changed USA's fortunes this summer, for those even who watched him, even the exhibitions, is the second Kevin Durant returned, they were just unbeatable.
Yeah.
Because of your point, because now the best player on the floor is him with a bench group. It's just like, and has he missed a shot the whole summer? Like, I know he has, but it doesn't feel like it. It's changed everything rotationally and effectiveness for them. And I know their defense is going to be very good, especially when Bam's out there. So Serbia's just they don't have enough firepower to me, even though they are pretty good. I would have picked them probably in the top 3 or 4 teams. And yeah, we glossed over Canada. It's not fair, right? Like, they have the most NBA talent of any non-USA team for sure. Their front court is not great. Kelly Olynyk's been fine. Dwight Powell's been fine. But that's where you've seen in these games that has not let them get away from anybody, right? They've won, but not really like dominated anybody yet. And so I'd probably pick them as the favorites individually over both France and whoever they'd play in any silver medal or in any semifinal game should they get there. But I'm not like as convinced with them as some other teams. And them versus Germany is like the same argument that there is every time USA plays a team like Germany, where it's like, well, this Canada team was thrown together and they haven't played together until this summer, and this Germany team's played together every day since they were all 5 years old. Let's see how this chemistry versus talent thing goes. And that gap is smaller than it is with USA. So Canada's very good, and like on talent, they should be the second best team, but there's a lot of other contenders as well that make it hard to pick them right away.
It's interesting because it feels like Team Canada doesn't have the kind of feels like they have the ceiling in terms of the firepower, but they don't have the cohesiveness in order to be able to lock down possession to possession.
For sure.
And that's interesting because they have played together quite a bit. Like, Jamal Murray was not available last summer, but they're not. This is not a brand new concoction for Team Canada. They've been built into this for how many years?
Their whole second unit's pretty new, I think. They didn't have Nembhard last summer or Murray.
That's true.
They didn't have Trey Lyles last summer. It's mostly, you're right, but it's a little different. But yes, your point is correct.
By the way, just shout out to Giannis Antetokounmpo, who is probably going to be eliminated in Greece's last game. A Sisyphean effort from Giannis in a lot of these things, where he's just trying to drag that team as far as possible. France is interesting. It's just like they just don't have the firepower. They're like,
can someone on that team dribble towards the basket, please?
Just like once.
Towards the rim.
Tony Parker is rolling over in his baguette.
Yes.
All right. Up next, Lauri Markkanen remains on the trade block. There continues to be rumors that swirl around him, but today, as you listen to this on podcast, is a particularly important day for those discussions. We'll get into why up next here on Locked On NBA. I want to say about game time. I have about 1 billion concerts I'm going to in the month of August, and I've gotten almost all of them on Game Time. I've got tickets to all sorts of bands. I'm gonna go ahead and tell my age here. I have tickets to bands from the 90s. That's what I have. I have tickets to the bands that were popular in the 90s because I'm an old person, and so I'm going to see those. But I got them with Game Time, and I have absolutely awesome seats. I know I'm going to get a great view because they've got the panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, so you know what you're buying. They've got the all-in pricing. You toggle that feature on, and it's going to tell you all of the fees and everything in it, so you're not going to get caught off guard when you go to check out. I hate it when I'm like, it's this much, and then you go to check out, and you're like, wait, it's 30% more than that. That drives me nuts. Not going to happen with Game Time's all-in price. And AIM, they've got a lowest price guarantee. They'll credit you 110% of the difference. You can also buy tickets right up at the start of the event, even after. You're going to a baseball game, rolling up to the stadium, wait for first inning, check out Game Time. You'll be able to get in at a great discount, and you'll be able to go in and enjoy the ballpark. And what's better than that? Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. We'll be right back on Locked On NBA. Second segment here on Locked On NBA. Thanks for being with us on a Tuesday. Make sure to check out the show tomorrow. John Corrales and Jake Madison. Check out John's book. He's got a book on the Celtics because I know that so many people love listening to how good the Celtics are. Well, you should, but if you're a serious basketball fan, you should go get John's book. It's absolutely phenomenal. It's in stores and online now. All right, let's talk a little bit about Lauri Markkanen. So, Tony, this Lauri Markkanen situation has, I'm going to be honest with you. Like, I've checked in with the people that I check in on these types of things. But I've only kind of done it in like passing because I have a lot of reservation on the idea of him being traded, but there is a certain dynamic we got to talk about that has to do with a certain date today that's really important when it comes to the Markkanen talks.
Sort of. I think people have somehow this discussion has made this seem like some deadline, but it's not. It's a deadline if he's going to specifically be traded on February 6th. Like, why are we talking about this day as a deadline when we're going to, again, talk about it? It's so dumb. They can trade him on Wednesday. That's loud. That's fine. It's very confusing to me because I get that all these factors matter and why it's a big deal to the Jazz and to Lauri Markkanen and to interested teams. But it's like, this is not accurate. Can we talk about this like normal people talking about a tradable player? It's very weird to me.
So the idea is that because if you renegotiate with a player, there is a 6-month moratorium, which means that if he signs the extension after August 6th, then he will be with the Jazz for the duration of the 2024-25 season. He cannot be dealt again. So if you're the Jazz and you're dealing with the idea of either locking him up but having the option to trade him later, you would like to go ahead and sign this sooner because it gives you the option to either keep him long-term or trade him as soon as this season. That I think is part of the dynamics of how this works out. There are consistent reports that Markkanen is not going to do so, that he is, in fact, Jake Fisher from Yahoo was the first to report this, that he's going to go ahead and delay signing it because he doesn't want to get traded midseason. If he's going to be with the Jazz, he wants to be with the Jazz. If he's going to go somewhere else, he'll wind up going somewhere else. Presumably Golden State, Sacramento is also reportedly interested via Fisher. And that's kind of like the dynamics of this. So the idea is for maximum flexibility, it would be best for the Jazz if he were to sign this. But as Fisher kind of noted, there's a real simple way around this. He just won't sign it, and then we don't have to talk about it. And it's just simply, is he going to get traded in the next couple of days or not?
I honestly want Markkanen to flex it to the point like 12:01 a.m. on the 7th. he signs it. Like, make it a point, make it a thing. He could still be traded on the 7th if he doesn't renegotiate. It's not like it. And the other thing that matters for the Jazz is, and I think this is another part that hasn't been discussed enough to me, this actually is relevant, is if he is renegotiated this year and then has an extension up to the max, kind of like the Kings did with Sabonis, he's still young enough and good enough that it'd be a very tradable contract still. Like, he'd still have a lot of value next summer, and that's why the Jazz have held open this cap space to preserve this possibility. And so that does make a lot of sense for them, even if the 6th passes and it doesn't happen, which is why all these people who say, oh, the Jazz should say, sign it this day or we're not going to do it. It's like, no, you want him on the team. He's good and tradable beyond this year. So yes, they lucked into this one-day window. And for those who don't understand how lucky this is, by the way, he signed it on August 26, 2021, his current contract. And that summer, everything was off by a month because of COVID. So the NBA made this mapping table to figure out what dates this calendar matches to from that summer. And it's random. Like, sometimes 2 dates match to one and sometimes 1 day matches to one. So they just got so lucky that August 26th, 2021 matched to August 6th. If it was the 7th, we wouldn't even be having this discussion. So it's all very crazy and lucky. And I still just think the most likely resolution, given that the Jazz have held open their space, is that come Wednesday or Thursday or anytime after Tuesday, he signs a renegotiation and extension.
Yeah, I'll go a step further. This entire conversation, have none of you paid attention to Danny Ainge before? It's my question here. Is like,
right.
The reason that I've kind of been like not paying a lot of attention to this is because this is so transparently. I started asking questions from various people. I would hear like, oh, they're actually taking offers for this guy who's up for an extension or up for a new deal this summer. And I'd be like, that's weird. Like, he's awesome. Why would you do this? And that happened over and over and over again. And finally, an executive was like, here's the deal. Before you commit $200 million of your owner's money, you just want to know what the value is before. So that way, when you go back and you're able to say, like, yes, the contract is X, Y, or Z, but you were willing to give us, or they were willing to give us X, Y, Z before. And so, like, that's how this works out. Is, in my opinion, like, all Danny Ainge is doing is setting a market for Lauri Markkanen prior to the extension, so he can evaluate what exactly the extension does to his value in the trade market for offers that come after down the line. I think there is no scenario in which Lauri Markkanen gets traded this summer. I'm not saying, well, not no scenario. That's too far. Like, Markkanen could be like, hey, we're tired of our name being in all these rumors. Go ahead and send us to Golden State. And then the Jazz would probably be like, all right, we'll go for Cooper Flagg. Probably wouldn't be that big of a deal. But every indication is they love Markkanen. They believe in Markkanen. They want to build around Markkanen. Tony Jones of The Athletic has reported that pretty consistently. It just seems very forced that they're trying to make up this idea of this being a real trade possibility.
You have now hit the part that I think is the most interesting part of this, though. If they keep him, they're still not that good in the West in general. Right. They're actually better than I think people are giving them credit for. Like, they've routinely, this isn't a good team, but this is like, they've been a 500 team basically when he plays over the last couple years. Like, that's fine. So let's say they keep him, which we both seem to think is the most likely outcome. Then what do? Like, you can't just be 500 this year. The draft, as we'll talk about in the last segment, is too good for that. But you don't want to miss the plan because the West is really good. So that makes me wonder, they have this Eubanks and Juzang and all these guys hanging out there, but like, is that it? They renegotiate Markkanen? Or like, is there a August 10th Jazz trade that is for someone else to make Markkanen's team better because he is very good and Will Hardy's an awesome coach? What this middle line doesn't make sense to me this year, even though I think they should keep him.
Call it the Bulls. You can get yourself use Zach LaVine and Nikola Vucevic for cheap right now.
Well, we had that conversation with Hayes on this very podcast yesterday. I would not encourage the Utah Jazz to do that, man. I do not think that's.
This is what's tough though, is they have a young player that would be great to build around, but they don't have enough to build around. Even though Keontae George, I think, probably makes a leap this season, and so they're just kind of like they're at very, very high risk of being stuck in the middle now. Look, maybe it works out where it's like, hey, they weren't great. They missed the play-in tournament, and then they won the lottery. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, now we're off to the races. But it's tough. I think they're in a pretty tough situation. What I will say, though, is Golden State being, all this talk of like, they're not going to give up Brandon Podziemski or Jonathan Kuminga. They're not going to do that in this trade. And it's like, again, I ask you, have you never met Danny Ainge? Like, do you really think that he's just going to be like, sure, we'll just do Andrew Wiggins and a pick? That sounds nice. I don't understand what they think.
Once the market sends stuff, I'll have the same Warriors questions that I just said about the Jazz. Here's my final Jazz conclusion with this is, I don't know the exact number. I think it's 9 extra picks that aren't their own after this year that they have. And that does not include, I think they've picked 6 players in the last 2 first rounds, right? Like, that's too many. You can't have that many young players, right? And so I'm not like encouraging this specific player, but like, if there's a dangling Brandon Ingram, like, you have too much young stuff. It is worth trading for something at some point if it makes you better on Markkanen. I get that Ingram isn't like awesome or a great fit for them. Maybe they don't want to pay him and they wouldn't do that. So maybe not him specifically. He's just available, so I used his name. But they have too much young stuff. Like, you have to do something with that at some point.
Look, you can call me a hater, and that's fine. I'd rather have Zach LaVine than Brandon Ingram. That's my hot take to end the segment. I'd rather have Zach LaVine than Brandon Ingram. On the other side, I mentioned Cooper Flagg. This is going to be a heck of a draft. And we have some bad teams. So exactly how bad is the tank off, the lag for Flagg, going to be this season? We'll talk about that up next here on Locked On NBA. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what helps keep your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part's guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit only available to U.S. customers. We'll be right back on Locked On NBA. Final segment here with you on a Tuesday. Thanks for joining us on Locked On NBA with me, Matt Moore, and Tony East. So, Tony, the 2025 NBA draft is going to be a lot better from a prospect perspective than the 2024 one was. Cooper Flagg obviously is like the name. Absolutely. Like I've heard about him for a solid year and a half now about how awesome he is. And then he came into Team USA select camp and was like cooking Anthony Davis to add on to the hype. The Duke freshman is going to be absolutely just wildly hyped, as honestly he probably should be at 6'9" with the skill set that he has. But look, don't miss over Ace Bailey, who is going to be absolutely phenomenal for Rutgers. Dylan Harper for Rutgers as well. There's a number of guys in the international ranks that are also widely considered to be stars. You've obviously got the usual cadre of people coming out of UConn, etc. So this is going to be a great draft class, which means that we're going to have a lot of bad teams. Go ahead.
I hope it hits everybody like a brick every time that they have the same problem I have. When they read Cooper Flagg is amazing, and then they read that he was born on December 21st, 2006. He's about to play a college game for Duke at 17. And he's amazing. He was awesome at USA camp. Like, there's really good players like 2 through 6 this year, and it's like still a huge tier. You're about to draft an 18-year-old kid who's nasty like that. That is the headline of what we're about to talk about. It's crazy how good he is.
So the teams that I think we can look at that are probably going to wind up in a position to lose games or develop talent late, we'll say. I think the Charlotte Hornets need to go in that basket, even though I think they have some talent. Portland Trailblazers, the Washington Wizards.
Yep.
The Chicago Bulls.
Correct.
The Brooklyn Nets.
Mm-hmm.
Here's an interesting one. I don't know about the Pistons. That's one I don't know. Because like I'm doing
new GM.
New coach, new GM, added actual NBA talent. I actually kind of like where the Pistons are at. Not to like make the play-in tournament, not to surprise and like they're the 5 seed, just to be like a normal bad team and not oh my god bad. I think that last year was the oh my god, everything fell apart, like everything went so wrong for them, and a lot of it really was like if you look back, like a lot of the metrics are just like this was unsustainably like unlucky for them, and so I think they've kind of turned a corner now. The Brooklyn Nets, on the other hand, having been given a lifeline through the trades that they pulled off this summer, have all of the incentive in the world to make sure that this one counts. I'll ask you this. How bad do you think the tanking efforts are going to be? When will they start? And who's going to be the one that is most blatant in their efforts?
Oh, it has to. I think Brooklyn's going to be the most blatant because they are so incentivized to be bad this year right now. I mean, they only have 1 year where their pick's still out, but still, like, it's a very good draft and they got their pick back. But they have Schroeder and Camp Johnson and Nick Claxton and Dorian Finney-Smith and Bojan Bogdanovic. It's like they have to find a way to not play those guys, right? So that's why it's going to be so blatant where it's like the smallest, oh no, a scab for Bojan. Shoot, he's out 3 weeks. Like, okay, oh wow, that's weird. They closed with Trenton Watford at center over Nick Claxton. What was Jordy Fernandez thinking? Like that, they have to because they have so many eggs in this season's basket. Whereas, I mean, some other teams do too, but less so than the Nets. Like 2027, right? That their pick is just not theirs. So if they still suck by then, it's not good. So I think it's going to be them, but there might be some foolery in Washington, I think, as well.
Yeah, the Washington, I think, is an interesting one because they entertained offers for Kuzma all summer, but couldn't get a deal done. Now maybe they pull something off before training camp. I don't think Jordan Poole being on roster necessarily hurts your efforts to go in that direction at this point with where what a weird career for Jordan Poole. Trading Denny Avdia, honestly, like was when I kind of looked at the numbers, was
awesome.
Like,
good job.
I was like, oh no, like they really got way worse just by trading Denny. Like that was a significant move backwards for them. So I think the Wizards have a shot at being the worst. The Hornets are an interesting one just because, like, okay, LaMelo should be back. Brandon Miller was genuinely great last season. in a normal year, he's like a serious rookie of the year candidate if he's not playing in the same one as honestly both Wemby and Chet.
We talked about the Pistons have a new coach and GM. So does Charlotte. I mean, they're definitely thought of differently as they should be, but
they've got some veterans, right? Like they re-signed Miles Bridges, which that's a whole other conversation, but like they keep him when they could have just let him go. Like honestly, a lot of this, I'm like surprised that they didn't just like they had a real opportunity to kind of clear the decks here, and they haven't. And they still have some veterans like kicking around, like Grant Williams. So I am kind of curious as to what they're going to do, like how aggressive they're going to have to be. Like that's what I think will be interesting is if you see that a team is on pace for maybe not single digits, but like low teens, which we could genuinely get there with some of these squads. If they're on pace for that and you want to try and catch, how aggressive do you get with trade talks before January 1st? Can't wait till All-Star. It's too late then. That's 50 games in. So like that's why I think it's gonna be interesting. Some of these teams are looking at Cooper. If Cooper Flagg comes out and is as great in college as his hype stock is right now, how much are teams gonna pivot and go in that kind of direction? And then you have teams in the middle, like San Antonio. I think is another interesting one where I think we all kind of have the idea that like the Spurs are going to be a little bit better. Like they add Chris Paul, actual NBA player. They add Harrison Barnes, actual NBA player. I don't know how to really project them because I look at it as I don't know what to do with Victor Wembanyama's skill curve.
Yeah, everyone's just guessing.
He was so much better by January than he was in November.
Yeah,
that I'm just like, I don't know how to project this. I don't know where this gets to. But like the Spurs are another one that I think is really kind of interesting to ask. Like, and that does, I think, there are ripple effects here where if more of the teams go in this direction, it's going to bump up the win totals for a lot of these other teams that are in contention, which is one of the, like, I keep looking at the West and being like, how do I have all these teams with 50 plus wins? And then I look at, okay, maybe that's why is there's going to be like a ripple effect from these teams being easier. Maybe the schedule gets easier for some squads, but this is what makes it really tough is I don't know that the teams in the West are too good. So they're all going to be kind of in contention, which means it opens the door for those East teams to really, really develop young talent at the end of the season. Just wholeheartedly invest themselves in development.
Can I add another thing that I was looking at the other day that I think will become a topic that squeezes into these tanking discussions?
Hit me.
Let me just read you some things. Washington Wizards top pick next year, protected 1 through 10. Detroit Pistons first round pick next year, protected 1 through 12. Utah Jazz first round pick next year, protected 1 through 10. Charlotte Hornets first round pick next year, ladder protected. Portland's ladder protected. Chicago's 1 through 10 protected. The Kings are 1 through 12 protected. You can laugh. The league's pretty good. Someone is probably not keeping that among that group. That's a lot of teams. And that did not include the Nets. That did not include the Spurs. That did not include the Hawks. That did not include the Raptors. Like, whew, there's a lot of tank incentive for these teams that might be trying to be a little better this year. So even they might be trying to move down the standings. It's fascinating to me.
And again, I want to stress, like, this is not a 2-player or 1-player draft. Like, this one's supposed to be elite at the top, great in the top 10, and have great depth all the way through. That's just what I've been told by the people that are smart about the draft is like, this is one to actually invest yourself in, which is going to be just like a really fascinating dynamic given how many teams are in contention. And the play-in tournament has kind of shifted this where, yeah, that's kind of the mechanism here. I'll also say this. I think now that we're enough years into the play-in tournament, so no 10 seed has ever made it. No 10 seed has made it into the playoff field. Yeah. So you might as like, there's no real point in getting 10th. 9th, they're even. You might be able to make it in if you're 9th. You can make it in the playoff spot with a 9 seed. Can't make it in with a 10. Nobody does. So if you're in that, like, that's like got to be the worst spot to be in, is to be the Western Conference 10th seed. That's the one that you absolutely have to try and avoid.
And you forfeit? Can you forfeit a play-in game? Would Adam Silver be mad about it? We're good.
Outrageous. Will this be?
Flagg's good. Traore looks really. Traore's averaging 19 and 10 at age 19 in a pro league, and he's like the 4th pick. Like, the Rutgers kids are awesome. BJ Edgecombe looks awesome. Whew, it's we talk about these teams like, oh, the Bulls are like, oh, we still kind of want to win. We're just also developing at the same time. Like, no, you don't. You should not want to win.
No.
Let me help you. You should not want to do that.
Yeah, so that's where I think the Bulls are the most interesting team, right? Because like you could have a really successful season if Kobe White makes another jump, Modest Buzelis looks like an NBA player and a player you can build around, and you're able to be so bad that you wind up at the top 4 pick. That is a dynamite season for the Chicago Bulls, and the kind of season, honestly, that their fans have been begging for in this like treadmill of mediocrity that their ownership has stuck them on.
Yes.
And the question there is like, do Zach LaVine and Vucevic help or hurt that cause if they cannot deal them? Like, what do you do? Like, if you start playing LaVine and Vucevic and all of a sudden the Bulls jump out and it's like, wow, they're 6-5. What do you do?
Don't ask me. I would have done different stuff before now. So,
but
the tricky part of this is Vooch probably is a helpful loser at this stage.
Yep.
But LaVine, if he's healthy, might be good. You know, like you said earlier with him and Ingram, we'll see. His contract and injury history are what they are. So that's tricky. And there's other teams like the Hornets we talked about, like they kind of fit this group, but they're like trying to be better, but maybe they shouldn't be trying to be better yet. Can you wait 1 year, maybe?
Yeah, one more year. Just wait 1 more year. So
it's easier for us to say.
All right, it's going to do it for Locked On NBA. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you guys being with us. You can catch Tony on Twitter at TonyREast and follow him over at Locked On Pacers. You can catch me at Locked On Nuggets. Tune in tomorrow. Jake Madison, John Corrales will have you set as they react to Team USA and all the other Olympics quarterfinal results. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you guys again next time on Locked On NBA.